right, hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of The Pulse with Willie and Al. This is our first episode, the Inceptisode, and I could not be more thrilled to be here today. I could see my boy here waiting in the tunnel and stuff. He's lights out, music blaring and stuff. He's in there. It's in the South Tunnel. He's currently residing in New England. He's a fantasy baseball expert and a legend with a decade of dominance under his belt. He's a trivia guru and a certifiable genius, an absolute expert at making breakfast, former wrestler from the state of Massachusetts. Ladies love him, men want to be him. New Hampshire born and bred, your co-host, Al Castro.
What's going on, everyone? I am glad to be here. I'm glad we're going to do this. We're going to make this a weekly thing. And we've been talking about this for a while, and I'm excited for it. I don't know about you, but I'm really excited.
Me too. I couldn't be more thrilled now to be going through this. So, my name's Willie Creeman, but Shane Myro is my real name. I'm actually from the next state over from Al. I grew up in Vermont and stuff, New England, born and bred. Lifelong sports fan. Kind of wrestling was my bread and butter that I had with my dad coaching, and grew up a baseball fan, football fan as well, and this is actually going to be my 19th year, the start of my 19th year playing fantasy football, which is kind of crazy. So, but I grew up a Braves fan and an Indianapolis Colts fan, so I've got a few World Series championships and a few Super Bowl championships that I've gotten to appreciate in my lifetime. So, definitely thrilled to be here. And I couldn't...
For the Braves and Colts, I feel like there should be more.
I know, there definitely should be. It's a history of longevity, of greatness, with very little titles to show for it. But
Yeah.
And just on a personal note, man, it's an absolute pleasure to be doing this with you. I couldn't be more thrilled to be here with you doing this. So,
same, man.
Thank you. For those that don't know Al and stuff, he really is, and this isn't me just boosting him up a little bit, but he really is the tip of the sword when it comes to knowing stats, anything related to trivia, anything related to sports. He really is an absolute genius when it comes to that. So really happy to have him here today. Now, in terms of us getting going here, we're going to give you guys a little bit of what you can expect in terms of our podcast going forward. Kind of just an outlay of what you guys can get in terms of us from content in these episodes. So the first thing that I want to discuss is we're going to be filming these on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but bringing these to you guys, hitting your desk on Wednesdays and Fridays. Wednesdays we're going to deal with the reactions to the Sunday, Monday games, and kind of prepping you for the Thursday night football game. And then Fridays we're going to be giving you some of the preparation for the weekend, maybe some more heavy fantasy stuff, but kind of those Sunday games that we've got going through there. Anything you want to add to that, Al?
Yeah, I think too. I think as an audience, you have to give us a little bit of patience. What I feel like people might not know, Shane is in Turkey, and I'm in New Hampshire, so that is a 7-hour time difference that we have to somehow navigate. And with careers and Shane, who recently got married, so let's talk about that. Let's go.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Most beautiful wedding I've been to, and so we'll get them out on Tuesday. Oh my gosh, I can't speak.
No, that's all right. So, listen, we'll be filming on Tuesdays.
Yeah. We'll get them out on Wednesdays and Fridays. We'll try to get them out at the same time usually, but life happens.
We'll do our best for that because we want to be able to deliver you guys great, compelling content that's going to be fun for you to be able to see too. So. Yeah. First thing, kind of breaking down how the episodes will kind of go and stuff. We're going to start off with news and updates around the NFL, around Major League Baseball, and every once in a while we'll sprinkle in a few more tidbits of other sports as well as stuff comes up that's exciting in the news that people are talking about. Then we'll kind of break it into NFL, where we'll talk about our picks for the weeks, kind of some of the predictions that we have, and how that's going to kind of come forward and what we really think, our gut feelings about how those games are going to go. And then, you want to talk about baseball?
Yeah, so big things happening in MLB right now, especially for the Dodgers, who, every year they win 100+ games and they just can't figure it out. And this year, their pitching has been pretty suspect. And as somebody who plays fantasy baseball and has Julio Urias, he has been suspect all year. And just news came out the other day, arrested for a second domestic violence incident. And the Dodgers have already put him on administrative leave. He's a free agent at the end of this year, so he's going to face a lengthy suspension.
Yeah.
He first got arrested for this in 2019, served 20 games for that. MLB has really started to bring the hammer down on that, which I couldn't agree more. Like, you got to. And I think that, I think some team's going to take a flyer on him because he's, in sports, if you're talented enough, people will always give you a chance. And
Absolutely.
But if I wouldn't be shocked if he faces a minimum of half a season suspension.
Yeah.
For that.
I don't know what it is, man. It seems like this is a recurring thing with just the Dodgers. Like, it seems like, and I know the last guy was acquitted that they had talked about, but it seems like this is just something that happens there. It's just a shame. Like, I don't even want to try to make light of the situation because it's just an awful situation for him. It's an awful situation for his partner. It's an awful situation for the Dodgers and Major League Baseball. Just a bad look on all of that. First of all, my boys shell him the other night. He gets just rocked by the Braves. And then this ends up happening afterwards. It's just not a good situation all the way around.
Yeah. I feel like the MLB really started cracking down on this after, I want to say it was Jose Reyes. Jose Reyes had a big incident, and that really kind of put the wheels in motion. And I'm glad that Major League Baseball has finally started taking this seriously. And it is something that does seem to be an issue in Major League Baseball. And I hope that, Urias gets the help that he needs. And because it's not okay. Long and short of it, it's not okay.
Absolutely.
Full stop.
That's a big thing that, I think we're both hoping for on this is just that he gets the help he needs, that the people affected by this are okay, and that, this doesn't happen again in baseball or in football. In professional sports, they've got to set examples and stuff, and, that there's no room for this in any professional sports. So
I agree.
Well, just moving on in some of the baseball news and stuff. I think the big story that people want to talk about is Shohei Ohtani, and I see kind of the luxury of being able to watch a guy like this that we've really never seen. None of us are old enough to have seen Ruth, and to be able to see this guy come through and see what he's doing, it's kind of incredible. You want to shed some light on that and kind of what he brings to the game?
I feel like every game that he pitches, there just gets there's new comparisons, or he's doing things that he's never done before. I think it was last month, he struck out 10 and hit 2 homers in a game. And then played a doubleheader where he pitched the first half of one and then he smacked a couple homers in the second one. It's incredible. It's incredible. I am, as somebody that has MLB TV, a lot of nights, if I know that it's a Shohei start, I'll stay up for the West Coast games. That's staying up till 10, 11 o'clock at night to watch Ohtani. And it's just been, as a baseball fan, it's been a real treat to see. And I really think, too, that it's bringing in the casual fan because, let's face it, baseball's dying. It has slowly been dying, and they've done a lot of good things this year. The implementation of a pitch clock, I think, has been really helpful. As somebody that goes to a lot of minor league games, the minors have had a pitch clock for a while now, and I'll tell you what, you're out of there in under 3 hours every time, unless it goes either extra innings or it's a high scoring game. But even then, you're still out in a reasonable amount of time, which is nice. And what I hope for with Ohtani is he is a free agent after this year. Somebody is still going to back up the truck for him.
Right.
Let's be honest. And I pray to the baseball gods that he just gets out of Los Angeles. Even if he plays for the Dodgers, I don't want him playing for the Angels anymore. we've watched Trout for 10 plus years now, played one playoff series and get swept.
Yeah, it's
Like,
really sad to see him there. It's tough.
Yeah.
You brought up something really neat about Ohtani, and that's you're getting people that aren't typically baseball fans watching him. And I think that kind of speaks to like how great he is. And if you have this great opportunity as Major League Baseball, like I don't think they're that they have to put him somewhere, right? But like it would benefit them a lot for him to go to a big market, whether it's New York or Boston or to the Dodgers, to be able to do that. There's just so much that he can bring to the game that if he goes to one of those teams, he's going to be able to be that guy for them. You know, it could bring a lot to baseball and a lot more fans in the door.
I think he's going to stay on the West Coast when it's all said and done. And I'm going to go. I don't really believe in conspiracy theories, but the Dodgers last offseason, they didn't spend any money. And I think that's very intentional. And I think that the moves that they made at the deadline this year, they made very minor moves.
Right.
And I when it's all said and done, I think they're going to just back up the truck for Ohtani. And Ohtani gets to stay in Los Angeles. He still gets to be on the West Coast. He just gets to play for an infinitely better team that will make the playoffs every year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
but I also, too, there's a world where he could play for Seattle.
Oh.
Don't rule it out. I'm just saying, I think it's a small chance, but I'm just saying, if somebody's going to do it, it could be Seattle.
Well, let me ask you, how does the UCL injury affect his MVP race?
I think that he's done enough personally already that I think he's going to win the MVP regardless.
Really? Okay.
That being said, there is a world where, because he's now day to day, it's been a long season for him, and now he's just battling injury after injury. So there is a world too where a guy like Corey Seager comes in and cleans up, and like I think the thing against Ohtani that, like, while this drives me nuts, because he plays for a team that isn't winning, a lot of people won't vote for him for MVP usually. He won in 2021 because he just did everything he did things that people had never seen before. Right. And even though he played for a last place team, like that, he did so much that it just didn't matter. So I think he's still going to win MVP when it's all said and done. But I think the vote's going to be a lot closer than it was 2 months ago.
Okay. And do you think this ruins his chances of possibly being considered for a Cy Young with like having not like them shutting him down for pitching for the year? Like I'm not sure he was going to really be the favorite, but I know he was probably going to get some votes from people. Do you think it kind of takes him all out of that now?
I think so, yeah. And I'm with you on that. I don't think that he was ever going to win Cy Young. Mm-hmm. I think that he would have gotten a few first place votes. Right. But I think there are much better pitchers in the American League this year than Ohtani. Like, you got your Garrett Coles, you got your Effins. Like, you've just got enough guys that like it's not going to matter. Right. So.
Now, what is the impact? And I know you were talking before about like someone is going to back up the truck for him. Do you think this is going to have a big impact on his contract? Like, I know before they were talking about him possibly getting $500 million in a contract and stuff. Do you think that lessens now? Do you what is it that you're really feeling on this in terms of the range that you think he's going to come in at?
I think what's going to happen is I'm going to take this back. We're going to take a little trip here. So Steven Strasburg recently retired. Yep. And he, same thing, just a ton of elbow issues. He had that lights out 2019 season, playoffs where he just dominated, start to finish. And the Nationals gave him a ton of money. What the Nationals didn't do was insure that contract. Right. So now the Nationals are on the hook for that. And what I think is going to happen is people watch what just happened with Strasburg, mm-hmm. and I think that I think Ohtani's still going to get $500 million from somebody. Okay. I do. What I think is going to happen, though, is there's going to be a lot of incentives, and I think they're going to have to insure that contract. Okay. Because this is the second time this has happened now, and like, while people come back stronger than ever from Tommy John surgery, like, what he's doing now is unprecedented. And the first time he didn't even get it, like, if I remember correctly, he didn't get it surgically repaired. Like, he just like let it heal on its own. So, and there's still no word if he's going to have surgery on it, or if he's just going to let it heal again. So
I'm so glad it's like you read my mind bringing that up too, because like I was just reading the other day about how they were saying sometimes the first Tommy John surgery, and this isn't just him saying this, but multiple pitchers have said this now, that like after the first one you're never feeling the same, but after the second one your arm has never felt better. And that kind of is strange in the thought process of that, but maybe it's clearing out some of that scar tissue. I'm not sure exactly what it is and why they feel that way, but it's an interesting point.
Well, I think just the medical technology has just gotten so advanced at this point. Right. Like when we were kids, if you got Tommy John surgery, that was the end of your career. Like that was like, and at best, you came back as a reliever.
Right.
At best, like. But now with medical technology, the way it is, like you come back better than ever, and you see it too in football with torn ACLs. Like Breece Hall tore his ACL week 6 last year.
5 last year, yeah.
Yeah, and he's ready to go.
Yeah, even Javonte Williams tore his later than Breece Hall did, and he was playing in the preseason games. I'm like, what is going on here?
Well, you remember the year like Peterson tore his ACL, and then
okay, so he
came back 9 months. Yeah, came back 9 months later and ran for 2,000 yards.
Yeah, he's not a human being.
Yeah,
he's really not. So it is interesting that you bring that up though, because I really am a huge Adrian Peterson fan, and the fact that he was able to do that, you're right. Like he came back, and it's as if like you were the one kind of wondering like, okay, is there something wrong with me? Because, like, I'm pretty sure I saw him tear his ACL, and now I'm seeing him do this.
Yeah.
It's just, he's inhuman the way he went about that. So, and it's kind of interesting, as we're sitting here talking about Ohtani and kind of the contracts and stuff, it's a great segue into kind of like the NFL news that we have, right? Because that's been the storyline this summer, and not just summer, even dating back before that. When did Lamar get his bag? Then all of a sudden they're like, okay, Lamar gets paid, Jalen Hurts gets paid. Now we're waiting on Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, and then Herbert got paid, so now we're waiting on Burrow's contract, right? So it's like all of these guys, like it seems like they're waiting, but I think the biggest ones that it kind of has a big impact on is, there's 3 guys in particular in my mind that we have, and I know we've discussed this a little bit, but the first is Jonathan Taylor. I mean, you look at that, and it's just, talk about, like, and as a Colts fan, it's ripping my heart out, man. It really is, because this is a guy that we've seen 2 years ago, running crazy on defenses. Last year, he gets hurt, and this guy has no injury history before last year. Like, they talked about him missing practice once last year, and that was the first time he'd ever missed practice dating back to, like, middle school. So, like, it's crazy, like, how durable this guy was. He has the ankle injury. It's nagging. He comes back too soon. It's not right, and it seems like he's still hurt now. But the dissension between him and the Colts now is just, it's rough. So, like, I'm kind of interested, and I know, like, I want you to be able to share your viewpoint on kind of what you feel about it, who's right in this situation, and, like, how do we, like, what kind of impact does this holdout have on the team?
Well, first of all, I don't think the Colts are going to be very good this year. I'm going to say it. Like, I know Richardson, like, you saw some really good things in the preseason, but, like, this team's still a few years away. I think that they have the building blocks in place, but I don't think they're going to keep Taylor now because, like, they've done wrong by him. Like, and I'm always going to, in this place, I'm going to side with the player because as a running back, like, the abuse that you take on your body, like, you don't have a long shelf life. No. Like, you got to get that bag. You do. Okay. And it's funny because it's not funny, but, like, this offseason, teams are all of a sudden just not paying running backs. Right. And, like, every other position's getting paid except running backs. And that speaks kind of where they're at with the CBA. And I think the next CBA, the players are going to have to really fight for that to fix that because it's ridiculous. Like, they put the most wear and tear on their bodies, right? And they get treated like garbage. Well, I think that's, like Saquon Barkley. like what he
Yeah.
did for the Giants last year, and they wouldn't pay him. Like,
I know.
and I get the analytics behind it, and I get that like that like not paying a running back is just not worth it. You can just kind of replace it with something else. But like, no offense, like if you're replacing Saquon Barkley with an average running back, that Giants team looks vastly different.
Yeah, very
Vastly
much
different.
so. And I couldn't agree more with that. Like it seems like in the past the only time you heard about running backs really not getting paid, and I'm not saying the only time, that's a generalization, but the main story that you heard was like you think of the Le'Veon Bell holdout and stuff, and it ended up really didn't seem it wasn't a good feeling, even though he was like, yeah, I got paid. Was it really worth it to go through all of that? And then he went to the Jets, and honestly, after that, he just kind of washed out, man. He was never the same running back. It's like it just changed him, where he could have stayed in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh, they held their ground. They ended up not paying him and stuff, and then eventually he was just like, trade me. I'm seeing this, like, Saquon, I give him a lot of credit because he went in with his hat in his hand and just said, listen, let's get this done. Let's try to give me a little bit more. I'm going to come back. I'm going to work for you and stuff. And, like, even Jacobs, they just paid Jacobs, out in Las Vegas. Like, and that's a guy, like, a lot of people know it now, but, like, they didn't back. He was living out of his car going to games and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was just a rough upbringing for that guy. He's a grinder. He appreciates every single thing that he gets, and I love the fact that he got paid. I really do. I want to see him get a massive contract this year. I just don't think it's going to be in Vegas that's going to happen, right? They paid him for this year, but I don't see it going past that. But, one thing I was going to ask you, you talked a little bit about kind of the impact that it has on the player and kind of the team. Organizationally, like, what impact does that have when a player holds out, especially one that's like, there's no argument. He's their best player on that team.
Oh, and it's not even close. I think, especially with the Colts, like I would imagine that from the media, that's all they're hearing about, and like it's got to be a bit of a distraction. Like I'm not calling Jonathan Taylor a distraction.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. But just the whole situation, I would imagine like they're probably losing their focus a little bit.
Yeah.
Like they have a whole season to prepare for, where honestly they need every bit of preparation they need to probably squeak out 4 wins.
Absolutely.
Like,
so
I would imagine that's frustrating.
Yeah, well, one interesting dynamic, and I agree with what you said there, because I think it really does draw the focus away from, like, what's their job there? To win games. Shane Steichen, he's a first-year head coach there, and a proven, offensive coordinator with Jalen Hurts there. Like, this guy's a quarterback guru with what he was able to do with Hurts. He comes in, they get their guy in terms of Anthony Richardson. He's trying to get the team together, trying to get them on the same page, and then he's kind of got this there hanging over it where, like, he doesn't have any control over this situation, right? And as you look at that, like, I think it puts an interesting dynamic between the GM and the owner, right? Because, so you've got Jim Irsay as the owner of the team, and he's been there for years and stuff, but also you've got Chris Ballard, and kind of a neat little tidbit, I don't know if I ever told you this, but one of my previous bosses that I had at one of the companies I worked for, he was actually Chris Ballard's roommate at college. So,
oh, no kidding!
Yeah,
wow.
So, and he would tell me, some stories about him. He knew I was a Colts fan back then, so we'd share stories on him and stuff. But he was telling me Chris Ballard's like exactly as he appears. He's a great guy. He's trying to keep this team together. He's trying to bring in other pieces to make people happy and stuff. I think, and you saw it in the news, like, he came out, he wants to mend the fences. Like, he really does. He wants to make this work with JT. I think it's just going to take a little bit, and I think it's a lot of him running to JT and his agent, and then him running back to Irsay, and then, like, it puts him in a really tough position.
I'm going to say a thing, and Irsay has not made this easy. Like, I know he's the owner of the team, so he gets a say. I understand that, and it's ultimately his money. I get it, but, like, I bet you, like, if you polled people around the league, Irsay's one of the crappier owners in the league. Like, he just seems like the dude is just not a good human.
And
like,
he's one of the oldest ones that they have in the league, too. Like, one of them, I say oldest, but I don't mean it old and disrespectful. I just mean he's one of the most tenured. Like, this was the guy that kind of pushed together a lot of initiatives coming through, when it comes to GMs. Like, he was the one that pushed the whole Dan Snyder issue to the front and was like, listen, this is unacceptable. So I'm wrestling with it on the inside because I like Jim Irsay in the sense that I've seen him pay some of the players in the past, and I'm wondering why JT's not getting paid now. And I get it, you sign a contract, you show up, like you've got to fulfill that contract, but like the guy did have a great season two seasons ago. I understand what happened last year, but like I'm wrestling in between the issue because I can see the side of the player, and I know they're basically treated like vending machines, right? Like, I could just get another one and they're dispensable. Yeah. But I also see the issue where, like, hey, listen, you did sign a contract and stuff. I understand negotiating in maybe the last year of it or coming into the last year. He's still got a few years to go on this one, and that's kind of the tough piece of it.
I always break it down like this. It's like any other job. Like, when you do well at your job, like, you should ask for a raise. And I think that's what he's doing. I think that he has really excelled at his job, and now he wants a raise, and I respect it. Yeah. Like, I do. Like especially with Taylor, like he is one of the best running backs in the league. He's a
fantastic player.
Come on.
He really is. Like, it's
2 years ago, like if you had him on your fantasy football team, you won your league.
Yeah. He's just. And now it's like he went the other day in a league I was in, I think in the 5th round of my league, because there's so much uncertainty. There's like talks of him possibly, I guess there was rumors of him maybe going to Miami and like them offering trades, but like the GM comes out and says, nah, that wasn't anything. We weren't having, there was no trades that were discussed with that. And then all of a sudden Green Bay appears as like maybe they were interested in him. And what does that do for Aaron Jones there and his thought process? So like it has like ripple effects when news starts to surface on stuff like this. But as we're sitting here talking about GMs, let's talk about another one real quick, and kind of one of my favorite GMs, so it's tough to talk about this one right now, but John Lynch, like, amazing player. This guy was an absolute hammer when he was in the league. I loved watching him play. But I think there's a lot of pressure on him too. You look at Nick Bosa, their best player, unquestioned, is not there, and we are 2 days before the start of the season, right? Like, okay, they got a few more days to get him out there for Sunday, but like, he should be out there, right? Like, he's the anchor of this defense. Not only that, but, and before we get into it, I want to mention the other piece of it, the botched handling. At least that's what people are calling it, of this Trey Lance trade, right? Going to Dallas and like giving up so much to get this guy, and like you don't really even see much of him on the field. And now we're changing gears already to Mr. Irrelevant, who I like. I like him.
Yeah.
Well,
so a couple things. I've read pieces in the past, like, I don't know, like 6 weeks, that Shanahan really wanted Mac Jones and got talked out of it.
He thought about him flirting with him, like at the combine or something, like following him around and stuff, right?
And if I remember correctly, that year they were picking 12, and they thought that the Patriots were going to jump up and like trade for Mac Jones.
Yeah.
So they make that trade, and I am convinced that, and from everything I've read, they were going to take Mac Jones, and they got bullied out of it because there was more upside with Trey Lance. And honestly, I think Trey Lance would still be a 49er if Brock Purdy didn't play the way that he did.
Right.
It's a weird, like, I it's obviously too early for comparisons, but it's that weird, like, hey, lose your job to injury, this backup comes in, this low round backup pick, and like just takes over and got him all the way to the NFC title game. And like, honestly, had he not gotten hurt,
sounds like another story I know, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Could be, And I think that, like, what's weird is this wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't have happened if Purdy didn't play the way that he did. And, and what's weird, from everything I've read, people are kind of letting John Lynch off the hook with this trade because, like, they were able to get something back for him, and like it worked out because they got Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
And like, I think not enough's being said that, like, when you go back in history, I think this is going to go down as one of the worst trades ever.
Right.
Like,
I've seen it ranked on Twitter a few times now. Like, I think the Ricky Williams trade might have been the worst trade ever, but like when oh man, Mike Ditka basically folded their whole draft for Ricky Williams. Like, it was,
yeah,
he traded every pick for him. And but time will tell, right? And maybe a change of scenery, going to Dallas, being behind Dak Prescott, maybe that's going to give him a chance to kind of grow a little bit. Dak's a professional now. He's able to kind of show him. He's more of a veteran, being able to show him the ropes and stuff. Maybe a change of scenery is a good thing for him, man.
I mean, I think what Dak Prescott's going to teach Trey Lance is how to throw back-breaking interceptions in the fourth quarter. That's what he's going to teach him.
Yeah, listen, it's who knows what can happen with that. I hope it's going to work out well for him, and I hope it's not short-lived in the NFL for Trey Lance, because I don't want to see him play 11 games in college, get drafted, and then just wash out. I don't like that. It doesn't.
History has shown that we've seen that, though. Like, remember Sanchez had 12 starts at USC.
Yep.
Or it was like something between like 12 and 16 starts.
Yep.
Gets drafted 5th by the Jets and washes out pretty. I mean, like, he led them to 2 AFC title games. I will give him that, but like, that dude should still be in the league.
Yeah. And even, as we talk about some of these GMs, I think there's a lot of pressure on them, first of all.
Oh, yeah.
Those first-round picks, if they don't hit, it's, like, big time. So, but it's not just about the draft. It's also about piecing together a successful roster. And you see some of the organizations, you look at New England and stuff, what they've been able to do there. Scott Pioli was there for a number of years and stuff, and the way he was able to kind of work with Belichick to put together a good team, and Kraft as well. They had, you look at a 20-year period that they were basically relevant because of that. And that's, a big thing. It kind of, and I kind of want to loop in baseball on this, and, I think who I'm going to bring up on this. But, I look at Alex Anthopoulos, like what he's able to do in Atlanta, and like how they're still competitive. Like, you lose a guy like Freddie Freeman in free agency, yet you just reload. Like, even the guys that they had after they won that World Series, Jock Peterson, Soler, like, these guys are gone now, right? Like, they left after that season. They were not even 1 year, half-year rentals, and they win the World Series, and then he just reloads, and they were back pushing for a World Series again last year. It didn't get done. They got upset in the playoffs by the Phillies, and then it comes back again this year, and they are the team. How is he able to do something like that? With what they have there, like, how is he using the tools that he has to become successful?
For the record, what has helped them is he's signing these guys to, like, I can't remember if it was Acuna. It was like 8 years, $100 million, and you're like, that he should be getting $300 million in 10 years. But like, he's got all these guys under cheap contracts, and like, I'm gonna be honest with you, that helps. What I worry about at some point is the bill coming due, where guys like Acuna is like, hey, you know what? I'm one of the best players in the league, and I am making less than $15 million a year.
Right.
Pay me. Like, I think that's going to happen with them at some point. Mm-hmm. Like, I really do. But until then, like, they just keep competing, and they keep. I think with Atlanta this year, the one thing that worries me, their bullpen's not as solid as I want it to be.
Right. As
somebody that has Rafael Iglesias as their closer on my fantasy team, it has been maddening this year.
Yeah.
Maddening. Like.
And they've still won a ton of games. They've won the most games in the league.
Yeah.
It's wild.
I think this is the year in the National League. I think they go back to the World Series because, like I said with the Dodgers, their starting pitching is so suspect. Like, that's gonna come back and haunt them in the playoffs. Right. Like, you time and time again, you can't not have pitching and win the World Series. Right. You can't. Like,
that's
and for that, like, I think the playoffs will be a cakewalk otherwise. Like, respectfully, like, Milwaukee, like, they're fine, but they don't scare me.
No.
Like,
I think that's the thing.
Like, the Phillies have a rotation that can match with Atlanta. Right. That's the one thing, and they have the bats.
Yep.
They have the bats to match. So like,
And they did it last year, right? Like that's
yeah,
the big thing too. So I think we'll get into that a
yeah,
little bit more with, and I just wanted to like kind of dip into that a little bit with like the
yeah,
GM and kind of what they're able to do there and stuff. But we'll get into that in our next segment when we talk about break down Major League Baseball and kind of get through those pieces. So just real quick, and we can get through the injuries here because I think it's a big thing that impacts teams not only in baseball but also in football as well. Some of the injuries that I'm seeing here are kind of, they don't make you feel good, right? Like they're nervous
yeah,
injuries that some of these players are having going into the season and stuff. And I mean, I don't think anyone knows injuries quite as well as Colts fans when they think about like Bob Sanders and kind of looking at his time there, right? Like when he was playing, the guy was an absolute monster on the field. 5'8",
yeah,
220 pounds. I'm sorry if I'm wrong there, Bob. Maybe he was 240, but he was an absolute hammer, right? Like he
yeah,
brought the hammer down on people, and I loved it. He would just smash people. But when he was hurt, when you throw your body around like that, you get hurt. And when he was hurt,
yeah.
the Colts were a completely different team. So
Oh
I
yeah,
think that's a big way to kind of segue into these injury pieces and stuff. And I think the big one that we've taught, that I want to talk about is kind of Cooper Kupp and his nagging hamstring injury. Now,
yeah,
I'm the dipshit that went and drafted him 7th overall, so I'm feeling some pain on this. This was, this was the 27th, so this was before the news had come out that he re-aggravated it, and now I hear
yeah,
signs that he's gone to Minnesota to seek, information about the origins of this hamstring injury and try to diagnose it further, understand what it is. There's rumors he could be out a quarter of the season now. So, like, tell me, like, how do you feel about that? Like, the words day to day, is that something that makes you feel good?
I'll tell you what. With fantasy baseball this year, there was a while where I had like 6 or 7 guys that were just day to day, and I made the joke in our fantasy baseball group chat that I was starting to field an all day to day team.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's just you log in first thing in the morning, you open up fantasy baseball, and you're like, you just see a new day to day next to a guy, and you're like, come on, why? Like it's maddening, and I like it's scary, and especially too like with Cup, like we're less than 2 years ago, he was the best receiver in the league that people were talking about should have won MVP.
right, yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
and,
Like that's
and with it's tough too because with the Rams, like he's not going to have a lot of great options
right.
this year for guys thrown to him. Like it's not like Stafford like is old and he is routinely hurt at this point, and I don't.
That's the thing. I mean, yeah, the days of Cooper Cup winning the Triple Crown like that was definitely great to see, but it's kind of nerve wracking now as I see it because, I want to see him out there and playing not just for my fantasy team, but he's an electric player to watch when he's out there.
Yeah,
Like he's a lot of fun. But to your point, I really see like Matthew Stafford. He's getting over that age where you're starting to get concerned and the injuries are starting to pile up. Like, what did he have? Like a lacerated spleen last season and stuff, or it was something
yeah,
real serious, like a spinal cord injury that I think he had. Like, it was not a good situation
no,
there. So, that was the first one that I wanted to talk about. Just that hamstring re-aggravation. It really seems like some of those things just nag all year, right? Like it's just. You need
yeah.
like a whole off season to kind of get rid of that. So it makes me a little nervous for that. But I think the big one that like people have talked about, especially in the off season, what about Tua? With the concussions, because that's something that I think to all of us we were kind of scared last year to watch because you're seeing someone and wondering like we've seen concussion, we've seen these films, right? Like what happens when these guys are getting concussed on the field. And, you see him come back into the game last year. So just looking at some of the offseason stuff that he did, basically the art of learning how to fall. Like he was training with jiu-jitsu people. Like
Yeah.
if he wants to really learn how to fall, he didn't have to pay all that money. He could have just gone to URI and hung out at my fraternity
Yeah.
house. Like have 4 beers,
Yeah.
he'd be falling anywhere he wanted to. But for this, like, what's your view on it and the take?
I first of all, what happened when they played the Bengals last year was horrific.
Yeah.
It was absolutely hurt. The hit that he took, like, sometimes, like, you watch football and you watch hits that you're like those just kind of sit with you for a little while. And I thought about that hit multiple days after.
Right.
Like, I just was like, I just
get it out
genuinely,
of my head.
It was gross.
Yeah.
It was gross. And I like that there's a couple things that concern me, and we'll talk about it too when we get into like how we think the Dolphins are going to do this year. A couple things that concern me with Tua. One, he floated out retirement during the beginning of the offseason, which leads me to think that, like, I don't know if no pun intended here, but like his brain's really going to be in it this year. Like, if he already is starting to have that feeling like maybe I should retire, I think it's that he's going to start looking for more and more reasons to. And frankly, I don't blame him.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
Like, you see the guys that have CTE and like what ends up happening and the sad end of their lives because they have this disease.
Yeah.
And while I'm really thankful he's, learned how to fall, like, respectfully, a lot of those times he's going to get hit, he's not going to know it's coming.
Right. And that's the
like,
big thing. Like,
I don't know how you prepare for that.
Yeah, you can't. And I think for him, like, he's approaching it like, listen, you can't play afraid, right? He's a competitor. He really is. So he's not going to go out there and play afraid. He's going to he's going to go out and play football. That's what he knows how to do. So
yeah.
Oh man, a really tough thing to talk about because neither of us want to see him hurt or anything like that. And when he was out there playing and healthy and stuff, he was awesome. Like, he was really a lot of fun in Mike McDaniel's offense. Him with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that is fun to watch, man. Like,
they started 3-0 last year, and they beat the Bills.
Yeah, like, even I'm thinking of the game in particular between him and the Ravens. Like, it was just an absolute shootout. That was a ton of fun watching that. So, and that's a division with very little room for error. Like, he's got 3 very legit defenses he needs to play 6 times a year. That's a tough go for him. So, I think we'll move on real quick here at, the last piece of this segment and stuff. And I wanted to provide a little bonus for everyone. And, just because it's been in the news this week, you saw him on Pat McAfee and stuff. And he's electric when he is able to talk and stuff. But Deion Sanders and what he's able to do at CU, I mean, what he's been able to accomplish there in just a little bit of time. Like, the main thing is, like, changing. You can't just come in and make changes. You have to change the mindset, the culture. And, like, that's what he's done there in very limited time. So, just a few things I want to go through of what happened there. The two-way player in Travis Hunter there.
That guy was the number 1 recruit 2 years ago, and Deion got him to Jackson State, which is incredible.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it's just the stuff that he's able to do. Like 142 snaps in the game. He played almost every snap. Like, cornerback, wide receiver, both sides of the ball. Like, that is unbelievable. Like, he's doing it kind of the way Deion was. Like, in the interview with Pat McAfee, he talks about it too, saying, like, this kid's a lot like me. Like, we draw a lot of parallels to each other. But, the other piece of that is his son playing QB and just drawing big praise from pros around the league. Like, and that's kind of the surprising thing about it is people are coming out now like, oh, yeah, we didn't know and stuff. Like, the dude's an athlete. He's Deion Sanders' son. Like, he's a great player. He's going to be successful. And what better way than to throw for over 500 yards, no picks, and 4 touchdowns in the first game. Like, a truly remarkable performance. So I know we got a few things to kind of unpack there, but let's talk about that, like, walk the walk mentality that Deion kind of brings to this team.
I'm going to be honest with you. He talked a lot of shit in the offseason, and I believed him in some aspects, but I thought, man, this team isn't very good. Like, and I know that he cut like 2/3 of the team to bring in his own guys, but I still was like, they played at Jackson State. Like the competition isn't as good. Like, I just assumed that, that they weren't going to be very good this year. And I still subscribe. I think they're not going to be very good. I'm going to say it. I think things that helped them in week 1, they had all offseason to prepare for one opponent.
Right.
For TCU. They got to spend a lot of time on that. 2, I don't think TCU has ever really come back from the shellacking they took in that national title game against Georgia.
Right.
Like that.
I don't think anyone
like,
can.
That's boy, and like we've played sports before, and like tough losses sometimes are really hard to bounce back from.
Exactly.
They are
it weighs on you mentally, psychologically. Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah, and you almost get a little gun shy after because you're like, what? Like what am I doing right now? What am I going to do? Yeah. So I think that like TCU, I think they're still, they had a remarkable season last year. They went undefeated, got all the way to the title game, which is just incredible. But like, they got rocked, and they got rocked in a way that everybody saw.
It was very public. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very public and painful. So I think
but they could go
tough.
The thing is, though, there's a world where they're playing Nebraska next. And Nebraska, respectfully, I watched a bunch of that Nebraska-Minnesota game. Nebraska can't move the ball.
That's so a tough game, too.
But what also worries me with Colorado is defensively, they got torched.
Yeah, you give up 45-42? You give up 42 points. Like, you could say all you want about, like, how good of defensive players you have, but there's 11 guys on the field, right? Like, there's a lot of accountability there. I think the one thing that I do really like and that I draw out of kind of seeing what happened and what transpired this weekend was the philosophy that he kind of coaches with, right? I think I can, right? And it's magnified times 1,000, right? But like that belief in yourself is so powerful. Like I know, we wrestled together in high school and stuff, and I know one of the things that I struggled with was having that belief in myself going out there. And when I didn't think about it, I'd go out there and wrestle really well, but when I got too much in my head, it would have a big impact on me. And I think the fact that he's out there teaching these kids the importance of believing in yourself and having that mentality, I think I can, it really allows them to accomplish more than maybe they might believe they personally can.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just, and it feels good to see that, right? Like I don't know anyone that can look at that and be like, that's a bad thing. The thing that he's trying to accomplish there is not an easy thing to do at any, at any Division I program. To go in and have that kind of drastic change within 1 year. He walked in and what was it, 70-something kids ended up leaving? Like it was, they brought in a whole new recruiting class of kids and basically said, oh, we'll keep these 12 guys, but the other ones, you're gone. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, Colorado hasn't been good in a long time. They last won the national title in 1990.
Yeah.
Like, it's been a long time, and I think what he is doing, what I really appreciate is, like, he's getting people to talk about Colorado football, which nobody has talked about since, I don't know, since, like, Cordell Stewart played there. You know what I mean? So, it's tough. I think that they're going to ultimately, I think he's going to do well. I think, though, that there is going to be a lot of growing pains this season.
Yeah.
Because they are going to play some really good teams, and I think that those teams are going to really thump them.
Well, this is the thing. We're seeing him after a big win, and, like, it was a historic win for them because, like, they even talked about his son Shador, like, the TCU offensive coordinator, like, he had gone to his camp and basically paid him no mind and kind of snubbed him there. And he's like, Dad, we're never coming back here again. So he was extra amped up for this game to go out and really prove it for him and stuff. And I think, like, going forward here, like, what we're going to see is we've seen you on top and how you're handling it. When you get thumped and we have some consecutive losses that are big, if those happen, how are we going to deal with that? And that's the big thing that I hope Deion's able to instill in these kids is you need to be the same person whether you're on top or whether you're getting thumped, right?
Yeah, I think you're going to learn a lot about that, the way he coaches after losses.
Right, yeah.
And my fear is Deion Sanders seems like a coach that I think he's going to be a really good coach, but I think that he is somebody that really grinds on players a lot, and that like there's a shelf life for that, and before guys start tuning you out, and so he's gonna have to be able to adapt somewhat, like because they're not gonna win every game. They're not.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see for sure.
Okay. They're not going to win every game, and I want to see how it is when they're not as successful and how things end up doing. How they handle it during that time.
Right.
I think that kind of wraps it up for what we're talking about in terms of college football for now, at least, and stuff.
Yeah.
But we are going to be back in part 2. We'll break down get into like our intro for the NFL. Major League Baseball, we'll talk about that as well, kind of give some picks, predictions, and stuff. So stay tuned, and we will be back for part 2.